Let me be direct with you from the outset, because what happened 48 hours ago fundamentally changes the military balance of power in the Middle East and eliminates Israel's primary advantage in any future conflict with Iran. Russia has delivered the S-400 Triumph air defense system to Iran, not components, not training packages, not a preliminary deployment, 4 complete S-400 batteries operational and fully integrated into Iran's existing air defense network. This is not a symbolic arms transfer. This is a game-changing weapon system that threatens every aircraft operating within 400 kilometers of Iranian territory, and that range covers every Israeli airbase, every American facility in the Gulf, and every commercial flight corridor across the region. I am looking at satellite imagery published by ImageSat International and confirmed by multiple open-source intelligence analysts that shows S-400 components being unloaded at the port of Bandar Abbas and subsequently transported to defensive positions near Tehran, Isfahan, and the Natanz nuclear facility. What this imagery shows is not a future deployment. It is an operational reality. The systems are on the ground. Russian technicians are on site. And according to Iranian Defense Ministry statements released yesterday, the systems are already integrated into Iran's air defense network and capable of engaging hostile aircraft. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly what the S-400 system is capable of, why it represents a threat that Israeli and American air forces cannot ignore, how this delivery changes Israel's ability to conduct preemptive strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, and why Russia's decision to transfer the system to Iran signals a broader strategic realignment that Washington and Jerusalem are not prepared to counter. This is the end of Israeli air superiority in the region. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are about to cover is being war-gamed in the Israeli Air Force Command Center and at U.S. Central Command at this very moment. Let's start with the system itself, because understanding what the S-400 can do explains why this transfer is so significant. The S-400 Triumph is Russia's most advanced long-range surface-to-air missile system. It was designed to defend against aircraft, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and UAVs at ranges that exceed any previous air defense system deployed globally. Each S-400 battery consists of a command vehicle, radar systems capable of tracking up to 300 targets simultaneously, and up to 8 transporter erector launcher vehicles, each carrying 4 missiles. The system can engage targets at ranges between 40 and 400 kilometers depending on the missile variant used. The 40N6 missile, the longest range variant, can hit aircraft flying at altitudes up to 30 kilometers, which covers every altitude band used by combat aircraft, including high-altitude reconnaissance and strategic bombers. The engagement time from target detection to missile launch is less than 10 seconds. That is faster than the reaction time required for most aircraft to detect the radar lock and deploy countermeasures. The radar component, designated 91N6E, operates in multiple frequency bands and uses advanced signal processing to defeat stealth technology. This is critical. Israeli F-35I Adder stealth fighters, which represent the cornerstone of Israel's strike capability, are designed to evade detection by traditional radar systems. The F-35 stealth profile reduces its radar cross-section to approximately 0.01 square meters, comparable to a golf ball. Conventional air defense radars struggle to track targets with cross-sections that small at operationally relevant ranges. The S-400 radar is not a conventional system. It uses low-frequency bands that detect stealth aircraft by tracking air displacement and aerodynamic disturbances rather than relying solely on reflected radar energy. At low frequencies, stealth coatings and airframe shaping are less effective. According to multiple studies by defense analysts, including assessments by RAND Corporation and the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies, the S-400 can detect and track F-35 aircraft at ranges between 60 and 150 kilometers depending on flight profile and environmental conditions. That is sufficient to provide targeting data for missile engagement. Colonel Yoav Har-Even, a retired Israeli Air Force officer with experience in electronic warfare, stated in an interview with the Jerusalem Post this morning, and I am quoting him directly here, "The S-400 changes the calculus for every mission we plan over or near Iranian airspace. It is not that the F-35 becomes useless, but the assumption that we can operate undetected and strike at will is gone. Every mission now involves significant attrition risk." Announcement number 1, Iran now possesses an air defense capability that can engage Israeli and American aircraft across most of the country and extending into neighboring airspace. And this matters more than anything else because it removes the primary tool Israel has relied on for decades to manage existential threats, the preemptive airstrike. 4 S-400 batteries, if positioned strategically, can provide overlapping coverage across Iran's most critical military and nuclear facilities. The batteries reportedly delivered are positioned near Tehran, protecting the capital and government command centers, near Isfahan, protecting the uranium conversion facility, near Natanz, protecting the primary enrichment site, and near Fordo, protecting the underground enrichment facility built into a mountain. These locations were not chosen randomly. They represent the targets Israel would strike in any military operation aimed at degrading Iran's nuclear program. The effective range of the S-400 means that Israeli aircraft cannot approach these sites without entering the engagement envelope. Standoff weapons, cruise missiles, and glide bombs that allow aircraft to strike from outside air defense range have limited effectiveness against hardened or underground facilities. Destroying deeply buried targets requires precision-guided, bunker-busting munitions delivered from aircraft that penetrate close to the target. The GBU-28 and GBU-57 bombs that Israel would use against Natanz and Fordo require direct overflight or near overflight to achieve the precision necessary to penetrate reinforced structures. With the S-400 operational, that overflight is no longer tactically viable without accepting losses that Israel cannot sustain. Israel's entire air force consists of approximately 330 combat aircraft. Losing even 5 or 10 aircraft in a single strike mission represents a strategic setback. Losing 20 or 30, which is plausible if multiple S-400 batteries engage a strike package, is catastrophic. The Israeli Air Force cannot regenerate losses at a rate that sustains prolonged operations. Iran knows this. Russia knows this. And now every military planner in Tel Aviv knows this. Received. That is announcement number 1. Now, here is where the situation becomes even more complex and where the implications extend beyond Iran to the broader regional security architecture. The S-400 transfer is not just about defending Iranian airspace. It is about Russia signaling to the United States and its allies that the rules of engagement in the Middle East are changing and that American military dominance is no longer guaranteed. Announcement number 2, Russia's decision to deliver the S-400 to Iran, is a direct challenge to the United States and a test of whether Washington will respond with meaningful consequences. This is the part that exposes the limits of American influence and the erosion of deterrence that has defined U.S. foreign policy for decades. The S-400 sale has been discussed for years. Iran first requested the system in 2015, shortly after the JCPOA nuclear agreement was signed. Russia delayed the transfer, partially due to pressure from Israel and the United States, partially due to concerns about Iranian payment reliability, and partially because Russia used the potential sale as leverage in other negotiations. That changed in late 2025. According to Russian defense sources cited by TASS news agency, the decision to move forward with delivery was made at the highest levels of the Russian government, meaning President Putin personally approved the transfer. Why now? 3 reasons. First, Russia is increasingly isolated from the West due to ongoing sanctions related to the war in Ukraine. Selling advanced weapons to Iran generates revenue and demonstrates to other potential customers, India, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, that Russia is willing to transfer its most advanced systems. Second, Russia views Iran as a strategic partner in a multipolar world order that challenges American hegemony. Strengthening Iran militarily weakens American influence in the Middle East, which serves Russian strategic interests. Third, Russia calculates that the United States will not respond with meaningful consequences because Washington is focused on China and cannot afford to open a second major confrontation with a nuclear-armed adversary. That calculation appears correct. The Biden administration condemned the S-400 transfer and announced additional sanctions on Russian defense entities. But those sanctions are symbolic. They target companies already under sanction and add no new material cost to Russia. The United States did not recall its ambassador. It did not withdraw from arms control negotiations. It did not deploy additional military forces to the Gulf. The response was rhetorical, not substantive. Stay with me because this is where the dominoes start falling and where the consequences extend far beyond Iran and Israel. If Russia can transfer the S-400 to Iran without facing meaningful consequences, what stops it from transferring even more advanced systems in the future? What stops China from selling Iran advanced fighter aircraft or ballistic missile technology? What stops North Korea from providing Iran with intercontinental ballistic missile expertise? The erosion of consequences is the erosion of deterrence, and once deterrence collapses, the stability that prevents conflicts from escalating evaporates. Announcement number 3, and this one almost nobody in the Western media is emphasizing correctly. The S-400 deployment forces Israel to choose between accepting that it can no longer strike Iran unilaterally or conducting a preemptive strike on the S-400 batteries themselves before they become fully operational. Both options are terrible. And this is the strategic trap that Russia and Iran have constructed. Option 1, Israel accepts the new reality. The S-400 remains operational. Israel shifts from offensive strike planning to defensive posture. The assumption that Israel can set back Iran's nuclear program through airstrikes is abandoned. Instead, Israel relies on intelligence gathering, cyber operations, economic pressure, and diplomatic isolation to slow Iran's progress. This is a massive strategic concession. It means accepting that Iran will eventually develop nuclear weapons capability and that Israel's ability to prevent that outcome militarily is gone. Option 2, Israel strikes the S-400 batteries before they reach full operational status. This requires a large-scale air campaign targeting not just the S-400 systems, but also the supporting radar installations, command vehicles, ammunition depots, and potentially the Russian technicians operating the systems. Striking Russian personnel creates the risk of direct military confrontation with Russia, something Israel has carefully avoided for decades. Even if Russia does not retaliate directly, it could provide Iran with even more advanced systems, escalate support for Hezbollah and Hamas, or coordinate with Iran to launch multi-front attacks on Israel that overwhelm Israeli defenses. Option 3. Israel pressures the United States to strike the S-400 systems on Israel's behalf. This drags the U.S. into a conflict with Iran that Washington has tried to avoid and potentially into a confrontation with Russia. The likelihood that the United States agrees to this is extremely low given the risks and given the Biden administration's focus on avoiding Middle East entanglements. If Israel asks and the U.S. refuses, the refusal itself damages the U.S.-Israel alliance and signals to regional actors that American security commitments are negotiable. Think carefully about what this means. Israel has spent decades building the most capable air force in the Middle East, specifically to maintain the ability to strike enemies before they become existential threats. That doctrine, preemptive action based on air superiority, has defined Israeli military strategy since the Six-Day War in 1967. The S-400 makes that doctrine obsolete. Israel now faces threats it cannot preemptively destroy without unacceptable risk. That forces Israel to operate reactively, waiting for threats to materialize before responding, rather than proactively eliminating threats before they mature. That shift fundamentally weakens Israel's strategic position. This pattern is not unprecedented. Let me take you back to the 1970s and 1980s. The Soviet Union deployed advanced air defense systems, the SA-3 and SA-6, to Egypt and Syria to counter Israeli air superiority. During the Yom Kippur War in 1973, those systems inflicted heavy losses on the Israeli Air Force, shooting down more than 100 aircraft in the first days of the conflict. Israel eventually adapted its tactics, developed electronic warfare capabilities, and regained air superiority, but the war demonstrated that even a technologically superior air force can be neutralized by advanced integrated air defenses. The S-400 is not an SA-6. It is generations more advanced, with longer range, faster engagement times, and the ability to defeat stealth technology. The lesson from 1973 is that air defense systems can neutralize air superiority, but the lesson from 2026 is that modern air defense systems are so capable that adaptation may not be possible without unacceptable losses. So where does this leave us? Let me give you 3 scenarios, because the next 60 to 90 days will determine how Israel responds and whether this escalates into broader conflict. Path 1. Strategic restraint. Israel does not strike the S-400 systems. Instead, it invests in developing countermeasures, improved electronic warfare systems, saturation tactics using large numbers of decoys and drones, and standoff weapons that can engage targets from outside S-400 range. This buys time, but accepts that strikes on deep Iranian targets are no longer viable in the near term. Likelihood, 45%. The safest option, but requires accepting strategic constraints that Israeli leadership has never tolerated. Path 2. Preemptive strike on S-400 batteries. Israel conducts a large-scale air operation targeting the S-400 systems before they reach full operational capability. The strike involves dozens of aircraft, cruise missiles, and possibly special forces to destroy radar installations and command vehicles. Iran retaliates with missile and drone strikes on Israeli territory. Hezbollah launches rocket barrages from Lebanon. The conflict escalates into a regional war that draws in the United States. Likelihood, 30%. High risk, but consistent with Israel's historical willingness to strike threats preemptively. Path 3. Covert sabotage. Israel uses intelligence assets, special forces, and cyber operations to sabotage or degrade the S-400 systems without conducting overt airstrikes. This avoids direct escalation, but is uncertain and may not succeed if Iranian and Russian security is effective. Likelihood, 25%. Israel's preferred option, but difficult to execute against a system as heavily guarded as the S-400. I think we are heading toward a combination of Path 1 and Path 3. Israel will attempt covert operations to disrupt the S-400 deployment while simultaneously developing tactics and technologies to operate in a more contested airspace. A preemptive strike is possible but becomes less likely as the systems become fully operational and Russian involvement deepens. Here are the questions I want you to think about. First, if Israeli F-35s can no longer operate safely over Iran, how does Israel prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons? Second, what does this say about the effectiveness of American deterrence if Russia can transfer its most advanced systems to a U.S. adversary without facing meaningful consequences? Third, how does this change the calculations of other regional actors like Saudi Arabia and Turkey who are watching whether advanced air defenses can neutralize Western air power? Tell me in the comments whether you think Israel will strike the S-400 systems or accept the new reality. Tell me if you believe Russia will transfer even more advanced systems if this deployment succeeds. Tell me how the United States should respond to a transfer that undermines its allies' security. We will keep tracking every development, every deployment, every response as this situation evolves. That is what this channel does every day. Subscribe now. Share this analysis with everyone trying to understand why a single weapon system can change the balance of power in an entire region. Turn on notifications because the implications of this deployment are still unfolding, and we will see you in the next briefing.